I always believed our life was picture perfect. From the outside, Emily and I were the epitome of success and happiness. A beautiful home, 2 kids, and thriving careers, everything seemed to be in place. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form, cracks that I was determined to understand and mend. It was a chilly October evening when I first sensed something was amiss. I had just returned from a long day at the investment firm where I worked, the weight of closing a major deal still pressing on my shoulders. As I stepped through the front door, the familiar sounds of laughter and conversation greeted me. Our kids were playing in the living room, and Emily was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. But something felt off. Emily was unusually tense, her smiles forced. I decided to let it go, attributing it to the stress she must be feeling from her own high-pressure job in marketing. After all, we were both ambitious, always pushing each other to achieve more. That night, as we sat down to dinner, the conversation was stilted. Emily seemed distracted, her mind elsewhere. I tried to engage her, asking about her day, but her responses were curt and evasive. It was the first hint that all was not well beneath our seemingly perfect life. A week later, everything changed. My younger brother Mark, whom I had always trusted implicitly, came to me with a proposition. He needed $300,000 to invest in a new venture, promising substantial returns. Given our close bond, I didn't hesitate to lend him the money, believing in his judgment and integrity. But Mark's gratitude was short-lived. A month after borrowing the money, I discovered that he had been embezzling funds from his own company to cover personal debts. The betrayal cut deep, but that wasn't the worst of it. Around the same time, I began noticing Emily's odd behavior escalating. Late nights at work, secretive phone calls, and unexplained absences became the norm. One evening, driven by a mixture of suspicion and frustration, I decided to follow Emily after she left for what she claimed was a business meeting. My heart pounded with a mix of anger and fear as I trailed her to a downtown hotel. Peering through a window, I saw her in an embrace with another man, a sight that shattered the illusion of our perfect marriage. The room spun as emotion surged through me. Betrayal, rage, and a cold determination took hold. Emily had not only betrayed me, but had done so with someone I barely knew. The realization that Mark was involved added another layer of deceit that I couldn't ignore. In that moment, I vowed to uncover the full extent of their betrayal, and to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The path ahead was murky, filled with twists and turns I couldn't have anticipated, but I was resolute. Confidence surged within me, replacing the hurt with a steely resolve. I was no longer the naive husband who trusted too easily. I was someone who would take control and exact the revenge they both so richly deserved. Little did I know, the deeper I dug, the more tangled their web became, leading me into a labyrinth of secrets that would test every ounce of my resilience and cunning. The days that followed my discovery were a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. My mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle of Mark's betrayal and Emily's infidelity. Confidence remained my anchor, propelling me forward despite the chaos surrounding me. I decided to confront Mark first. We had always been close, sharing secrets and supporting each other's ambitions. How could he betray me like this? I arranged a meeting at a quiet cafe, determined to get answers. As I sat across from him, the facade of brotherly camaraderie crumbled. Mark avoided eye contact, his nervous demeanor a stark contrast to his usual assuredness. I needed the money, he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. Things got out of hand. I felt a surge of anger. You stole from your own company to cover personal debts? And you expect me to just forgive you? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I messed up, I know. But I didn't mean for it to go this far. There was no remorse in his voice, only desperation. My confidence didn't waver. I had always believed in taking responsibility, but Mark's actions were unforgivable. You expect forgiveness? After everything? He looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I was wrong. I can make it right. I shook my head. It's too late for that. You should have thought of the consequences before pulling off this stunt. Leaving the cafe, I felt a mix of relief and residual anger. Mark's betrayal was a bitter pill, but it was Emily who had truly shattered the foundation of our marriage. It was time to turn my attention back to her. I began observing Emily more closely, noticing patterns and inconsistencies in her stories. Late-night outings became more frequent, and her excuses grew thinner by the day. Determined to uncover the truth, I set up subtle checks, monitoring her phone, tracking her movements, and even enlisting the help of a private investigator. The deeper I delved, the more disturbing the findings became. Emily wasn't just seeing someone on the side. She was entangled in a web of lies and deceit that extended far beyond a simple affair. Financial discrepancies surfaced, suggesting she had been siphoning money to support her clandestine activities. One evening, I decided to confront her directly. We sat in the living room, the kids asleep upstairs, the weight of our fractured relationship hanging heavy in the air. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She looked up, her eyes cold and defiant. "About what?" "About everything. The lies, the secrets, the money, what's really going on?" Her facade of composure cracked, revealing a glimpse of panic. "I don't know what you're talking about." I leaned in, meeting her gaze with unwavering confidence. "Cut the crap, Emily. I know you're having an affair, and I know you're involved in something shady with Mark." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You have no proof." I smiled, a calculated move. "Oh, I have plenty. And trust me, the evidence is mounting." Before she could retort, the doorbell rang. It was our neighbor, an elderly lady who had witnessed Emily's frequent late-night comings and goings. She handed me a photo of Emily and a man I didn't recognize, laughing and intimate, taken just last week. Emily's mask shattered. "Fine. Yes, I'm seeing someone, but it's not what you think." I stood up, my confidence unwavering. "It's exactly what I think. You're wasting my trust, and now you're tearing our family apart." Her facade of strength faltered, revealing a woman desperate to save face. "I can fix this. We can fix this." But I had made up my mind. The path of revenge was clear, and there was no turning back. The realization that both my brother and wife were intertwined in this betrayal fueled my determination. It was time to reclaim my life, and I would do so with calculated precision. The confrontation with Emily left me reeling, but my confidence remained unshaken. If anything, her admission of infidelity only fueled my determination to expose the depths of her deceit. I knew that taking down both Emily and Mark required meticulous planning and unwavering resolve. My first step was to secure indisputable evidence against Emily. I intensified the surveillance, ensuring that every late-night outing was documented. With the help of the private investigator, I obtained photos, text messages, and financial records that painted a clear picture of her betrayal. Each piece of evidence was a testament to her lies and manipulations. Meanwhile, Mark's situation continued to unravel. His company was on the brink of collapse, and his personal debts were spiraling out of control. I kept a close eye on his financial transactions, uncovering a trail of fraudulent activities and hidden assets. It was clear that Mark wasn't just struggling. He was sinking deeper into a web of deceit to cover his tracks. Emily, on the other hand, became increasingly erratic. Her once polished demeanor deteriorated into bouts of anger and desperation. She began throwing tantrums over minor issues, her true colors flashing through her facade. Her attempts to manipulate our children only solidified my resolve to protect them from her toxic influence. One evening, as I reviewed the amassed evidence, a new twist emerged. Hidden within Emily's financial records were substantial transfers to an offshore account. This revelation hinted at something far more sinister than a mere affair. It was as if Emily and Mark were collaborators in a larger scheme, orchestrating a plan that went beyond personal betrayal. Determined to uncover the full extent of their alliance, I delved deeper into their financial connections. It didn't take long to discover that the $300,000 I had lent to Mark was only the tip of the iceberg. Mark had been siphoning funds not just from his company, but also from joint ventures he and Emily had supposedly embarked upon. The realization that they had been partners in crime was a bitter pill to swallow, but it only strengthened my resolve to bring them both down. As I pieced together the intricate network of lies, my confidence transformed into a strategic mindset. I began to formulate a plan that would leave Emily and Mark with nothing. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and ensuring that they faced the consequences of their actions. I consulted with financial experts and legal advisors, mapping out their financial vulnerabilities. Their hidden assets, fraudulent activities, and illicit partnerships provided ample opportunities to strike. I knew that exposing their crimes would not only ruin their reputations, but also dismantle their financial empires. Throughout this process, my emotional state was a blend of steely determination and calculated calm. I remained focused, letting logic and strategy guide my actions. The betrayal had been a catalyst, transforming me from a wronged husband into a man on a mission. One night, as I reviewed the final pieces of my plan, I realized that the time for passive retaliation was over. It was time to take decisive action. With everything in place, I was ready to execute my revenge, ensuring that both Emily and Mark would be left with nothing they had so deceitfully accumulated. With my plan meticulously crafted, I felt a surge of confidence unlike anything I'd experienced since the day I discovered their betrayals. Every detail was accounted for, every vulnerability exposed. The time for passive retaliation had passed. It was time to make my move. My first target was Mark. His financial empire was built on shaky ground, and I knew exactly how to bring it crashing down. I began by contacting the authorities, armed with the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. Fraudulent transactions, embezzlement, and the offshore accounts were all laid bare, painting a damning picture of his deceit. The initial response from the authorities was promising. They launched an immediate investigation into Mark's financial activities, freezing his assets and scrutinizing every move he had made over the past few years. The pressure was mounting, and I could see the cracks forming in his confident facade. Meanwhile, Emily's situation was equally precarious. Her financial discrepancies were more severe than I had anticipated. The offshore transfers indicated involvement in illegal activities far beyond mere infidelity. I decided to leverage this information to dismantle her carefully constructed image. I arranged a meeting with Emily under the guise of reconciliation. Our conversation was tense, the air thick with unspoken accusations. "Emily," I began, my voice calm yet firm, "I've uncovered some things we need to discuss." She scoffed, her eyes darting nervously. "What are you talking about?" I presented the evidence one by one, her financial records, the offshore accounts, the hidden transactions. Her facade of control began to crumble as she realized there was no escape. "You thought you could deceive me, manipulate our family, and cover your tracks all at once," I stated, my confidence unwavering. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, adopting a defensive stance. "You have no idea what you're talking about." I leaned in, my gaze piercing. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about. Your affair, your financial crimes, your partnership with Mark, it all ends now." Before she could respond, the sound of sirens pierced the tension-filled room. The authorities had arrived, summoned by the evidence I had provided. Emily's composure shattered completely as officers moved in, arresting her on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. As I watched her being led away, a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow washed over me. She had been the architect of our family's downfall, and seeing her face the consequences was both vindicating and heartbreaking. But this was only the beginning. With Mark and Emily both ensnared in their respective legal battles, I turned my attention to the remnants of our shared life. Their actions had not only betrayed me, but had also jeopardized everything I had worked for. It was time to ensure that they were left with nothing. I initiated legal proceedings to reclaim the $300,000 I had lent to Mark, now knowing it was deeply entangled in his fraudulent schemes. The court ruled in my favor, seizing his remaining assets to cover the debt. Mark's reputation was in tatters, his career ruined, and his financial standing obliterated. Emily's downfall was swift and complete. The media frenzy surrounding her arrest ensured that her once prominent name was now synonymous with scandal and deceit. Her professional career in marketing was irreparably damaged, and her personal life lay in ruins. As their lives crumbled, I focused on rebuilding my own. The ordeal had taken a toll, but my confidence remained intact. I channeled my energy into my career, leveraging the experience to become even more strategic and resilient. The pain of betrayal had been transformed into a driving force, propelling me toward greater success. Emotionally, I navigated the aftermath with a calm determination. Anger had given way to a calculated sense of justice, and sorrow was tempered by the knowledge that I had taken control of my destiny. The revenge I sought was not fueled by blind rage, but by a clear-headed desire to reclaim what was rightfully mine. As I looked out over the city from my office window, I felt a sense of closure. Mark and Emily were no longer threats, but merely chapters of my past, lessons that had fortified me for the future. Their fall from grace was a testament to the power of resilience and the unwavering pursuit of justice. The initial strikes against Mark and Emily had been effective, but I wasn't satisfied with merely dismantling their current lives. Their betrayals had cut too deep, and I knew there was more beneath the surface that needed to be exposed. My confidence had transformed into a relentless drive to ensure they faced the full extent of their actions, leaving them utterly powerless. While Mark and Emily were entangled in legal battles, I delved deeper into their pasts, searching for any additional connections or secrets that could further cripple them. My private investigator unearthed a series of offshore accounts and shell companies linked not only to Mark, but also to Emily's professional network. It became evident that their collaboration extended beyond personal betrayal into a web of financial deceit that had affected numerous unsuspecting victims. With each new discovery, I meticulously documented their wrongdoings, ensuring that every piece of evidence was irrefutable. I leveraged this information to launch a public relations assault, contacting media outlets and sharing their sordid histories. The news spread like wildfire, painting them both as masterminds of fraud and manipulation. Their reputations were in shambles, and the public turned against them without hesitation. Having stripped them of their immediate financial resources, I set my sights on their remaining assets. I initiated legal actions to seize any properties, investments, and valuables they still held. The courts, now thoroughly acquainted with their fraudulent activities, ruled swiftly in my favor. Their bank accounts were frozen, their real estate seized, and any remaining assets diverted to cover the mounting debts and legal fees they could no longer manage. But I wasn't done. I wanted them to experience the personal anguish they had inflicted upon me. I reached out to mutual friends and acquaintances, revealing the true nature of their characters. Friends who had once admired Mark's business acumen and Emily's charm now saw them for who they truly were, deceitful and manipulative individuals who had destroyed a family for their gain. Emily, once a respected figure in the marketing world, found herself ostracized. I orchestrated scenarios where her professional misdeeds were highlighted, leading to her being blacklisted in her industry. Invitations to speak at conferences were rescinded, and former colleagues distanced themselves to avoid being tainted by association. Her public image was irreparably damaged, leaving her isolated and desperate. Mark's downfall was even more devastating. With his businesses in shambles and his reputation destroyed, he became a pariah in the financial community. Investors pulled out, creditors demanded immediate repayment, and his once thriving ventures were now bankrupt shell companies. The $300,000 I had lent him was a fraction of what he owed, and with no assets left to seize, he was left destitute, grappling with the consequences of his greed and dishonesty. Throughout this process, my emotional state was a blend of calculated precision and cold resolve. Anger had long since been replaced by a strategic mindset, allowing me to navigate each step with unwavering determination. I remained detached, ensuring that my actions were driven by logic rather than residual emotions. This emotional mastery was crucial, preventing any missteps that could undermine my carefully laid plans. I also made sure to cut off any remaining ties they had. By isolating them from their support networks, I ensured that they had no one to turn to for help or solace. Friends became wary of associating with them, and family members distanced themselves to avoid being dragged into the fallout. This isolation was a deliberate move to leave them utterly alone, forced to confront the ruins of their lives without any support. As I continued to execute my plan, the final pieces fell into place. Legal charges were filed for each fraudulent activity, and the evidence I provided was irrefutable. Mark and Emily found themselves battling not only their legal demons, but also the public scorn and the loss of everything they had built. Their once intertwined lives were now completely unraveling, each step of their downfall meticulously orchestrated. Sitting in my office, watching the news reports of their arrests and the subsequent court rulings, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The path I had chosen was ruthless, but it was necessary to reclaim my life and ensure that they faced the consequences of their actions. My confidence was unshaken, now bolstered by the tangible results of my efforts. The days following my comprehensive takedown of Mark and Emily were deceptively quiet. Their lives had been turned upside down, their reputations in ruins, and their financial empires reduced to ashes. Yet, a lingering sense of incompleteness gnawed at me. While I had meticulously dismantled their public personas and financial standings, I sensed there was still one final piece to the puzzle, a lingering threat that could undermine everything I had achieved. Late one night, as I sifted through the remnants of our shared financial records, a startling discovery surfaced. Hidden beneath layers of fraudulent transactions and shell companies was a document I had previously overlooked, a binding agreement that named me as a co-conspirator in one of Mark's ventures. My blood ran cold as I realized the extent of their deception. They had been meticulously plotting to drag me into their schemes, ensuring that any fallout would implicate me as well. The implications were staggering. If this document were to surface, it could not only tarnish my reputation, but also jeopardize the legal victories I had secured against them. The realization that they had been orchestrating their betrayal with such precision ignited a renewed sense of determination within me. This was the final gambit they had been saving, and I was resolved to neutralize it. Armed with this new evidence, I knew I had to act swiftly. My first step was to consult with my legal team, presenting them with the incriminating document. Their reactions mirrored my own shock and urgency. We devised a strategy to expose this final act of deceit without giving them any room to retaliate. I reached out to Mark's legal counsel under the pretense of seeking closure. During our meeting, I presented the document, outlining the elaborate scheme they had devised to implicate me. His face turned ashen, the weight of their manipulation evident in his demeanor. "You were never a part of this," I stated firmly. "But now, the truth is out." Simultaneously, I turned my attention to Emily, knowing that her desperate attempts to salvage her crumbling life would likely push her to her limits. True to form, she became increasingly erratic, her lies growing more elaborate as she struggled to maintain any semblance of control. Her once boorish demeanor gave way to sheer panic, revealing the depths of her desperation. One afternoon, Emily approached me under the guise of seeking reconciliation. Her eyes darted nervously, betraying her facade of calm. "We need to talk," she insisted, her voice shaky. "There are things you don't understand." I remained steadfast, my confidence unwavering. "I understand perfectly, Emily. You and Mark thought you could outmaneuver me, but you've only succeeded in further exposing your true selves." Her facade crumbled completely, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I can make it right. Just give me a chance." I shook my head, a cold resolve settling over me. "It's too late, Emily. Your games are over." With both Mark and Emily reeling from their respective confrontations, I initiated the final phase of my plan. I collaborated with my legal team to ensure that the hidden agreement was made public, dismantling any remaining defenses they might have had. The revelation sent shockwaves through their already fragile lives, leaving them with no avenue for redemption. Mark, stripped of any remaining assets and now publicly implicated in the scheme to frame me, faced severe legal repercussions. Emily, already isolated and financially ruined, found herself blacklisted in her industry with no prospects for employment or rebuilding her life. Throughout this final phase, my emotional state remained a balanced amalgamation of satisfaction and detached resolve. The journey had been arduous, filled with moments of intense anger and profound betrayal, but I had navigated each twist and turn with unwavering confidence. The cold-blooded revenge I had executed was not born out of blind rage, but rather a calculated pursuit of justice and personal reclamation. The revelation of the binding agreement shook me to my core. It was a masterstroke of deceit, designed to ensnare me in a web of legal troubles that could have unraveled everything I had worked so hard to build. But I wasn't about to let them dictate the terms of my life any longer. Instead, I used this new information as a weapon, turning their final gambit against them. My first move was to ensure that the document couldn't be used against me in any court of law. I met with my legal team, presenting them with the evidence of Emily and Mark's conspiracy. Together, we strategized on how to present this information to the authorities in a way that would not only exonerate me, but also implicate them further. The weight of their betrayal fueled my determination, pushing me to uncover every hidden facet of their scheme. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure on Mark and Emily intensified. The legal system began to turn against them on multiple fronts. Mark faced additional charges related to the offshore accounts and fraudulent activities, while Emily's financial crimes were scrutinized under a magnifying glass. Their attempts to salvage their reputations were futile, as each new revelation only deepened their fall from grace. Throughout this ordeal, I maintained my composure. The emotional turmoil that once threatened to overwhelm me had been replaced by a steely resolve. I navigated each challenge with calculated precision, ensuring that every action I took was a step closer to complete vindication. My confidence was unshakable, a stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded me. However, the most significant impact of their downfall was the toll it took on my personal life. Friends and acquaintances, who once looked up to Mark and Emily, now saw them for who they truly were, manipulative and deceitful. Relationships that had been strained by the scandal began to mend as people distanced themselves from the fallout. Yet, amidst this newfound clarity, I couldn't help but feel a lingering emptiness. The trust that had been shattered within my marriage left a void that no amount of revenge could fill. One evening, as I sat alone in my study, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. The perfect facade of my life had been dismantled, revealing the rot that lay beneath. My pursuit of justice had been relentless, but it had come at a cost. The emotional scars were deep, a constant reminder of the betrayal I had endured. Determined to reclaim my sense of self, I decided to focus on rebuilding. I sought therapy to navigate the complex emotions that still lingered, allowing myself to heal and move forward. The process was slow, but each session brought me closer to understanding and acceptance. I realized that while revenge had provided a temporary sense of satisfaction, true healing required letting go of the bitterness that had taken root. In the professional realm, I continued to excel. The challenges I had faced only strengthened my resolve, making me more strategic and resilient. My career flourished as I applied the lessons learned from the ordeal, turning adversity into opportunity. The confidence that had been forged in the fires of betrayal now propelled me to new heights, unburdened by the shadows of the past. Meanwhile, Mark and Emily faced the consequences of their actions. Their legal battles dragged on, each court date a public spectacle that further eroded their remaining credibility. The media frenzy that had initially drawn attention to their misdeeds had now waned, but the damage had been irrevocable. Their lives were a cautionary tale of ambition gone awry, a stark contrast to the man I had become through my trials. One day, I received a call from an old friend who had been a silent witness to the unraveling of my life. He expressed admiration for how I had handled the situation, offering support and encouragement. It was a reminder that amidst the darkness, there were still genuine connections that remained intact. These relationships, built on trust and mutual respect, became the foundation upon which I rebuilt my life. As time passed, the intensity of the revenge I had sought began to wane. The initial satisfaction had faded, replaced by a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. My focus shifted from punishing those who had wronged me to nurturing the aspects of my life that had been neglected. I invested time in my passions, forged new friendships, and allowed myself to experience joy once more. Yet, the memories of Mark and Emily lingered, serving as a testament to the fragility of trust and the destructive power of deceit. Their downfall was complete, but the journey had left indelible marks on both our lives. In the quiet moments of reflection, I acknowledged the darkness I had navigated, but I also recognized the strength I had gained from overcoming it. Standing on the precipice of a new chapter, I felt a sense of liberation. The shadows of the past no longer held power over me, and the lessons learned had shaped me into a more resilient and compassionate individual. Revenge had been a necessary step in reclaiming my life, but it was the journey towards healing that ultimately defined me. The weeks following the complete unraveling of Mark and Emily's lives were a testament to the thoroughness of my revenge. Their names were dragged through the mud in every possible forum: legal documents, media outlets, and even casual conversations among acquaintances. Each day brought a new confirmation that my efforts had left them utterly powerless and isolated. Yet, amidst this calculated triumph, a nagging unease began to settle in the pit of my stomach. The satisfaction of seeing them crumble was undeniable, but something felt missing. The emptiness that revenge had carved out inside me was becoming increasingly palpable. I had achieved my goal, but the victory felt hollow. One evening, as I sat alone in my study, the silence was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was unexpected, and a flicker of apprehension crossed my mind. I opened the door to find an unfamiliar face, an attorney I had never met before. She introduced herself as Clara Bennett, representing a group of investors who had been defrauded by Mark's schemes. Clara handed me a thick dossier filled with documents and statements. "Mr. Thompson, we've been trying to reach you regarding the substantial losses our clients have suffered due to Mark's fraudulent activities. We believe you might have information that could help our case." Confusion washed over me. "What exactly are you suggesting?" She glanced around, ensuring privacy. "Given your close relationship with Mark and Emily, any evidence or insights you can provide would be invaluable. In return, we can offer you a significant settlement to cover your losses and any potential legal expenses." My mind raced. I had meticulously documented every aspect of their deceit, believing that justice had been served. Yet, Clara's visit hinted at unresolved matters, areas I hadn't fully explored. Could there be more to their schemes than I had uncovered? Determined to maintain control, I invited Clara in and began reviewing the documents she presented. As I sifted through the papers, my confidence surged. Hidden within the layers of financial transactions were irregularities that pointed to a larger, more intricate network of fraud, one that extended beyond Mark's company and Emily's marketing ventures. It seemed they had been part of a consortium, pooling resources and orchestrating scams that defrauded unsuspecting investors on a grand scale. The realization was staggering. My initial revenge had only scratched the surface of their elaborate deceit. They had been more deeply entwined in criminal activities than I had ever imagined. This new information presented an opportunity to not only expose the full extent of their crimes, but also to ensure that no one else would fall victim to their manipulations. I decided to collaborate with Clara and her team, leveraging the evidence I had gathered to build a comprehensive case against the entire network. Meetings were scheduled, strategies devised, and additional investigations launched. The more I delved into their operations, the more I uncovered the breadth of their corruption. However, this newfound pursuit came with its own set of challenges. As the case gained momentum, I found myself once again in the public eye. The media, ever eager for a compelling story, began to paint me not just as a wronged husband and brother, but as a key figure in bringing down a major fraud ring. While the attention was beneficial in exposing the truth, it also reignited old wounds and brought back memories of the betrayal and pain I had endured. Emotionally, I oscillated between satisfaction and vulnerability. The process was draining, forcing me to confront the depths of human deceit and the extent of my own capacity for revenge. Yet, my confidence remained a steadfast anchor, guiding me through the complexities of the legal battles and public scrutiny. As the case progressed, unexpected twists began to emerge. Evidence pointed to other influential figures who had been complicit in Mark and Emily's schemes, individuals I had never imagined were involved. This revelation expanded the scope of the investigation, turning it into a formidable pursuit of justice that reached far beyond personal vendetta. One particularly shocking development was the discovery of a high-profile business partner who had been laundering money through Mark's companies. This partner had used Emily's marketing expertise to legitimize fronts for their illicit activities. The depth of their collaboration was both impressive and horrifying, showcasing the lengths to which they had gone to conceal their operations. Determined to see this through, I immersed myself in the case, working closely with Clara and her team. Nights were spent poring over documents, strategizing legal maneuvers, and preparing for court appearances. The weight of responsibility pressed upon me, but my resolve never wavered. I had come too far to back down now. Throughout this intense period, My emotional state was a complex tapestry of determination, frustration, and moments of doubt. The pursuit of complete justice was exhausting, but each breakthrough reaffirmed my purpose. The emptiness I had felt began to fill with a renewed sense of mission, ensuring that the full extent of their deceit was brought to light, and that no one else would suffer as I had. As the months dragged on, the legal battles intensified. High-profile hearings, testimonies from other victims, and relentless media coverage turned the case into a landmark fight against financial fraud and corruption. Mark and Emily, once seen as isolated perpetrators, were now part of a much larger narrative of systemic deceit. In the midst of this turmoil, I found solace in unexpected places. Support from friends and new connections forged through the legal battles provided a network of strength that I hadn't realized I needed. Therapy sessions became a cornerstone of my healing, helping me navigate the lingering shadows of betrayal and the complexities of my own emotions. One pivotal day, as I sat in the courtroom waiting for the final verdict, a sense of culmination settled over me. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with unexpected twists and relentless challenges. Yet, as the judge read the sentence, sealing the fate of those involved, I felt a profound sense of closure. The courtroom erupted in reactions. Some cheered, others remained silent. But for me, it was a moment of personal victory. The revenge I had sought had evolved into a broader mission of justice, transforming me from a wronged husband and brother into an advocate against corruption and deceit. The courtroom's solemn atmosphere mirrored the gravity of the moment. As the judge pronounced the final verdict, a sense of completion settled over me. Mark and Emily, once pillars of deceit and manipulation in my life, were now being held accountable for their extensive fraud and betrayal. The gavel's echo resonated like a distant drumbeat, signaling the end of their reign of deceit. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The months of relentless pursuit, sleepless nights, and strategic maneuvers had finally culminated in justice. Yet, beneath the surface, a complex web of emotions tugged at me. Revenge had been my driving force, but now that it was achieved, I grappled with an unexpected emptiness. As I stepped into the brisk evening air, the city lights twinkled like distant stars, indifferent to the personal battles fought beneath them. My phone buzzed incessantly, a reminder that the aftermath of my actions was far from over. Calls from media outlets, legal advisors, and even distant relatives seeking clarification flooded my inbox. The public spectacle of Mark and Emily's downfall had elevated my personal vendetta into a broader narrative of justice and retribution. One of the first challenges was managing the public relations fallout. The media had painted me as both the wrong party and the orchestrator of their demise. Interviews were scheduled, statements were prepared, and I found myself navigating the treacherous waters of public opinion. It was crucial to maintain the narrative that my actions were not fueled by blind anger, but by a calculated pursuit of justice. During a particularly intense interview, a reporter pressed me on the emotional toll of the entire ordeal. "Mr. Thompson, you've successfully dismantled both Mark and Emily's lives. But at what personal cost? How are you coping with the aftermath?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. Revenge is never a simple path. While I'm satisfied that justice has been served, the personal toll has been significant. It's a journey of healing and self-discovery, ensuring that I move forward stronger and wiser. The interview concluded without further probing, but the encounter left me contemplating the deeper implications of my actions. Revenge had provided a temporary sense of satisfaction, but true healing required more profound introspection and personal growth. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected alliance began to form. Clara Bennett, the attorney who had initially approached me regarding the investors defrauded by Mark, reached out with a proposition. "Mr. Thompson," she began, "your insights and the evidence you've gathered are invaluable. We're considering expanding our case to include other individuals involved in these fraudulent activities. Your cooperation could be pivotal." Intrigued, I agreed to meet with her. Over several sessions, Clara and her team uncovered a network of individuals who had been complicit in Mark and Emily's schemes. These connections extended beyond mere financial fraud, delving into areas of money laundering, identity theft, and even cybercrime. The scope of their operations was far more extensive than I had initially realized. You're essentially looking at dismantling a criminal syndicate, Clara explained. Mark and Emily were just the tip of the iceberg. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on me. My pursuit of revenge had inadvertently exposed a larger network of corruption and deceit. This new mission required a different kind of resolve, one that balanced personal vendetta with a commitment to broader justice. As the investigation deepened, so did the complexity of my emotions. The relentless pursuit of Mark and Emily's downfall had reshaped me in ways I hadn't anticipated. My relationships with friends and family had been strained, some irrevocably damaged by the scandal. The once confident husband and brother had transformed into a man driven by a singular purpose. Late one night, exhaustion overcame me, and I found myself staring blankly at the ceiling of my study. The reflection in the window seemed distant, almost foreign. Had I gone too far? Was the price of my vengeance worth the emotional and social toll it had exacted? These thoughts gnawed at me, creating an internal conflict that I struggled to reconcile. On one hand, the satisfaction of seeing Mark and Emily face justice was undeniable. On the other, the personal sacrifices, relationships lost, trust shattered, and a semblance of peace forever altered, were burdens I hadn't fully anticipated. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a routine meeting with Clara, she presented a new development. We've uncovered evidence that suggests there are more high-profile individuals involved in these fraudulent activities. This includes some of your former business associates. Shock rippled through me. The implications were staggering. Friends I had trusted, partners I had collaborated with, were now implicated in the same web of deceit that had ensnared Mark and Emily. The realization that corruption was more deeply rooted in my professional circle than I had ever imagined was both disheartening and motivating. Clara leaned forward, her eyes meeting mine, with a mix of determination and empathy. This is an opportunity to not only dismantle their network, but also to cleanse your professional life of any remaining ties to their schemes. Her words resonated, igniting a renewed sense of purpose within me. The journey wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about restoring integrity and ensuring that the corrupt individuals hiding behind facades of respectability were exposed.